In this video, I'm going to be giving my rankings on the films in Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures, Godzilla and Kong Monsterverse. This is a series of films that we just saw culminate in Godzilla vs. Kong, and with the films in this Monsterverse, I've seen a lot of mixed opinions from fans in terms of how they would rank the films in comparisons to the other ones. So that's why I wanted to sort of put my feelings out there about these films. Plus, there's only 4 films in this Monsterverse, which makes it relatively easy to put a rankings video together. So with that in mind, let's get started. At number 4 is Godzilla from 2014, the first installment in this Monsterverse. I get what this film is going for. It's trying to have sort of like a slow sort of build up throughout the movie to where the action at the end would be more spectacular in its finale. But unfortunately, the first part of this movie, the first 2/3, which I guess like first like hour and 30 minutes, ain't shit happening in this movie. You know, there's not really a whole lot of great pacing, not really a whole lot of story excitement, not a whole lot to really sort of get attached to, and worst of all, just not a whole lot of Godzilla. I mean, he's hardly in that first 2/3 of the movie, to where it really just feel like kind of like a slog to get through, and just like on repeat viewings, it's just like, man, there's just not a whole lot of Godzilla in his own movie. Really just following the Mutos, which are fine creatures, but I mean, come on, it's a Godzilla movie. You want to see Godzilla in at least one scene do his thing before you get to the end. And the human drama in the movie would have had something had it followed sort of Bryan Cranston's character. He gave a really great performance in the short time he was there. But unfortunately, after that, you follow sort of Quicksilver 1.0, his sort of journey. And he's really sort of like a boring sort of block of wood character in this movie that you just really just don't get anything from. Then you get to the end of the movie, and that's where sort of the payoff sort of come to where that battle that Godzilla has with the female Mutos and the male Mutos is really great. They have some good choreography. There's a lot of sort of like wow moments, and I thought they really did a good job with the Mutos, the scenes with the male and female sort of like bonding, and they really sort of like personify sort of like those Mutos characters. They did good stuff with them in that final section, and Godzilla had some great moments himself. But unfortunately, that doesn't make up for the first 2/3 of the movie, which, like I said, not a whole lot of good pacing, storytelling, or whatnot, which would make me put Godzilla 2014 last on this Monsterverse list. At number 3 is Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, for people that have just seen Godzilla vs. Kong, you may be thinking, wait, what? Number 3? And just hear me out, because I'm going to explain. Now, nobody can deny that that final part in Godzilla vs. Kong is spectacular. The fight that Godzilla vs. Kong, the fully realized fight, is just amazing to look at. The choreography, the action, the sort of like a wow moments, just like, oh my god, it's the fully realized version of Godzilla vs. Kong. It's just the ultimate battle. Great stuff. But I'm sort of ranking these as overall movies, just not individual parts. And you can't deny that outside the actual Godzilla vs. Kong element in the movie, that everything else in the movie was pretty subpar. I mean, the story is just really kind of stupid. They explain things once and just expect you to roll with it, even though you're just like, man, this is just not great writing right here, but I guess I'll roll with it. But man, this is just like, not really that good a story, especially in the first half. It comes around at the end, but the first half of the movie is just like, man, not a great story. But the human characters are even worse. I mean, goddamn, it makes the writing in those first 3 movies look like goddamn Shakespeare when it comes to the characters, just because they didn't even try to give like any sort of like good sort of story, anything to really sort of attach yourself to, any good development. I mean, the most development they have is that sort of sign language chick, that cannibal little girl from Skull Island, but really that's just nothing. That's sort of a cliche thing she's got going on with Kong that didn't really give me anything. So all the like sort of core elements outside the actual fight were really kind of like subpar in this movie. But obviously the movie is called Godzilla vs. Kong, and it does absolutely deliver on those fights that Godzilla and Kong have, to where, like I said, they just get everything right in terms of seeing the strengths from both characters, the choreography, the scale, the visuals, and that extra element they add at the very end of the movie in the sort of battle does give you sort of like a wow, just like fuck yeah kind of moment. But if I'm just judging as an overall movie, Godzilla vs. Kong was subpar in the other aspects, even though it's a movie I do definitely still like and really actually enjoy, just because it did ultimately deliver on the Godzilla vs. Kong aspect. At number 2 is Godzilla King of the Monsters from 2019. This is a film that got sort of like a mixed reaction from critics and even some fans when it came out. It got sort of dogpiled on in that way. And I always thought it was a little unfair, just because I thought this was a movie that was an overall improved experience from the first Godzilla from 2014. I mean, when it came to the human stuff, I think the best way to describe it in this film is that it was workable. You know, there were some decent human storylines. It had a decent like sort of like family dynamic. The comedy relief was actually funny, and a lot of scenes actually I thought the comedy comedy relief actually worked pretty well in this movie. And I like what they did with Ken Watanabe's character. I thought the human stuff was overall, it was tolerable in this film, which is the best thing you can say about MonsterVerse movies like this. But the movie itself is anchored by King Ghidorah, who he was just an amazing villain in this movie. I mean, the chaos he caused, the destruction he caused, the way he sort of like devastated the world, the way he led the other Titans, the way he really took it to Godzilla. He was just a great villain to where like, man, how the hell's Godzilla gonna beat this dude? And he really took it to Godzilla to where it's like, man, Godzilla, he needs the help from Mothra. He needs the help from his human allies just to take this guy down, because King Ghidorah is no joke. And in that aspect, he was a much more entertaining villain to watch him do his thing compared to the Mutos from the first film. Godzilla himself, I would say overall he definitely got more screen time in this movie, although I would say that the movie's biggest flaw is that ratio still isn't great. You know, they really just needed to have more Godzilla in this movie to really make it sort of a great movie, so I still don't think they found the right balance, even though it was improved from the first film. The film thing that makes up for that, though, is that you got a lot of stuff from other Titans, so you got always a whole lot of CGI goodness to look at in most scenes. You know, when it came to King Ghidorah, when it came to Rodan, when it came to Mothra, the other Titans that were sort of fucking up the world. So you got a lot of CGI goodness in this movie. When it came to the final battle, I actually thought the final battle in Godzilla 2014 was a little bit better. Something about the camera work and the choreography I thought was better, even though you still got a whole lot of great moments in the final battle in this film, and the way that Godzilla ultimately deals with King Ghidorah. That was amazing to watch visually, and that whole sort of like takedown and whole sort of sequence was really kind of like, ooh, that was cool stuff to watch. So overall, I think Godzilla King of the Monsters got a little bit too much hate, and overall I thought it was an improved experience from Godzilla from 2014. And at number 1 is Kong Skull Island from 2017. Even though this one is the least spectacular compared to the last two films that I've been talking about, I think it's overall sort of the best put together movie experience out of the films in this MonsterVerse that I've been talking about. I mean, it's a simple story about a group of people that go to an island and they obviously get involved in this crazy adventure. And what I'll say about the group of characters, the human characters in this movie, the ones on this island, in that, you know, it wasn't a great written group of characters in this movie when it came to character development and stuff like that. It was a decent group to follow. They had their fun moments, and it was just helped by the fact that it was an amazing cast that they had for this movie. And it's by far the best cast that they've had out of any of these MonsterVerse movies. And the one that was the best was John C. Reilly and his character. His character added a whole lot of humor and a whole lot of heart to this movie, and saw how his story sort of played out. So that was good stuff. But I think the thing that works out best in this movie's favor is that it has sort of a pretty good ratio of Kong screen time in this movie compared to all the other stuff that you got going in this movie. You know, that was obviously a flaw with Godzilla 2014. They didn't make that mistake in this movie. You get a good amount of Kong sort of doing his thing throughout the movie. It's well paced in that aspect. And you get a whole lot of other set pieces involving sort of other sort of creatures and stuff like that. The visuals involving the island are really good. So I think the stuff they did with that and the directing worked in the movie's favor, and the fact that the movie delivered and the stuff that it was supposed to when it came to sort of those like big monster moments, those big monster fights. The fight at the end is sort of really sort of satisfactory, and he gets sort of like a good sort of action and Kong sort of doing his thing. And so ultimately I think sort of the simplicity worked out in this movie's favor, which made it the best sort of overall movie experience out of the films in this MonsterVerse. So there you go with my rankings for the films in this MonsterVerse. Overall, I don't think anyone would try to confuse these films with trying to be Shakespeare with what they're doing with the story and characters. But as a whole, I actually think they do a pretty good job on delivering on that whole sort of MonsterVerse action with these big ass Titans going at it. So it's very satisfactory in that aspect, and we saw the sort of the culmination of that with that fight in Godzilla vs. Kong, which is just amazing to watch when you see it. So I don't really know what the future holds for this whole sort of MonsterVerse. I guess that depends on how Godzilla vs. Kong does in terms of financially, but overall hopefully we do get sort of like more sort of like those great Titan matchups in the future to come with these films. So that'll do it for this rankings video. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching.